April 9th. And roll call, please, Kathy.
Okay. Joe Mann, Tom Sahlberg,
Here.
Jim Baumker,
Here.
DG Garcia, Charlie Jenks, Dale Robbins, okay, Bill Foyer, Gene Huschel, and Troy Mullenix. Thank you.
I moved, do I hear a motion to excuse, did Dale get a hold of you?
Yes.
Okay, yes, to excuse the two.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna excuse both Joe and the other. A review of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? I'll take a motion to. You? Charlie,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bowker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And approval of the minutes from March 26th. The last time we had some changes, so does anybody have any changes or corrections or additions? I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Same two. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Everything's in. And I think that we'll move right into our workshops. One comment is that we've got a very busy agenda. And so remember that when we are making our comments, and let's try to get out of here before midnight. Lisa.
Yep,
Amy,
it's me. I'm not Mark McAvoy. So
thank
pardon me,
you.
pardon the mistake on the PowerPoint.
I'm sorry, it didn't change.
I saw it and I didn't change it either. So there you go.
Oh, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Gene. Amy, go.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background and then talk a little bit about next steps, and then we'll get into some feedback on the red lines that we included in your packet. So last fall, during the budgeting process, City Council decided to scale back a contract that we have with one of our economic development partners. And when they scaled back that contract, they directed staff to explore ideas for how we could, for alternative ways to provide those services and to develop an economic development strategy. So that came from council last fall. And so staff is preparing to begin that conversation with council on May 6th. So they're going to get staff is going to get some initial direction on kind of their vision and their priorities, and then where the next step is going to go. But the conversation is going to start on May 6th. So what that means for our economic development chapter is at this meeting, we'd like your feedback. We'd like your comments, anything that you have on the draft that was included. Because we drafted language, we tried to make edits to reflect the conversation we had at the last meeting. And so we'd like to get your feedback on that today so that we can incorporate those changes. And then we're going to kind of put a pin in it and see what happens with council, because we don't want to adopt a document that's going to be immediately out of date. And we don't want to adopt something that is going to accidentally be in conflict with the direction council wants to go. And we also want to make sure that what we are adopting is going to be supportive of what they want to do. So, and we have time in the process to kind of just hold off a little bit, and we'll do a detailed review of like line by line of the changes we're proposing after we have a better idea of the direction council is going to want us to go. Because we want things to jive. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna take your feedback today and then just kind of put a pin in it, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting. Next slide, please. So based on the red lines that we included in your packet today, do you guys have your general feedback, specific edits. We're open to anything that any reactions that you guys have to what we included.
How do you want to do that? Just page by page or just by person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I don't have anything on the first page.
Anybody have anything on the first page?
Oh. Page 2.
Page 2. I think I have 2 comments, but the first comment was on 11.
Mhm.
What is STEAM education?
Science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Oh, okay. I was,
Yeah.
They added A.
They've added the A.
yeah, I just wasn't familiar with that.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
It's another new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 years old.
Okay. The other, just kind of a comment, I don't want to get into wordsmithing.
Mhm.
But between encourage and support, I don't know, what's the difference between encourage and support? Sometimes we say encourage, other times we say support.
In policy language, they're pretty similar. I would say encourage is a little bit more active and support would be a little bit more responsive. So
Okay,
somebody
so
comes
some-
to us and we support it versus actively encouraging something.
So there was a conscious thought as to when to use those 2 words.
I believe those 2 were in the original chapter, so it's likely that when they were originally drafted, that was intentional, but these are vested, these are currently in the plan, so these aren't ones that we changed.
This, by the way, much of this document hasn't changed.
No, they're not synonymous, but they're close.
2005.
Okay. Well, I was just asking, what's the difference between the 2? And if there is a difference and somebody made a conscious decision to encourage rather than support, then I'm fine with that.
Can't say with certainty because no one's still standing from that group.
Well, you guys decide if you want to encourage it or support it, but I'm,
I think that, well, I think that that is your decision. If you think that one of these needs to change, then let's change
Yeah.
it.
If you'd like to see the city actively pursue something or kind of be a little bit more active in encouraging something, then encourage would be the word. If you'd like us to be more, when opportunities come our way, then we can be supported. It's a very small difference, but there is a difference there.
Standpoint, so it's something you're holding it up, but if you're encouraging, you might be able to add to it and develop and make it better.
Or you might be able to add it to whatever is happening.
DJ.
If you encourage it. Oh, forget about this.
okay, well,
Yeah, encouraging it is, if it doesn't exist, then it should. Then the conversation is to try to encourage it or get others to encourage it to be a part of what's
Okay.
happening. And then therefore we can support it after that.
okay.
And if I may interject real quickly, can everyone please check and make sure your microphone is on?
I think the 2 places that you suggested encourage fit. Because
Yeah.
I do think it's,
That's fine.
they're both places to be more active.
So anything more on
Anything on
page
page
2?
2?
So we're changing out
Nothing.
support to encourage?
Nope.
We're not.
No,
Leave it
it's
as it
encouraged
is.
in 2 places,
Mhm.
number 8 and number 11, where Jim was pointing to. And those are more active. So page 3. Any comments, questions, edits? Move to page 4. This starts up with the sustainable regional economic development.
Wait, I'm not. We went.
We
Page 3, right, had the, starting with C,
Right, and-
history and background,
Yeah,
then the next page.
and the next page is, yeah, you've got it in order.
I got an order, okay, well, I had a comment on the next page.
So we're on page 4. Go.
Yeah. The income, Says one of the primary reasons to pursue economic development is to increase the standard of living for the citizens and businesses. I don't know how you increase the standard of living for a business, so I would strike that.
The whole section?
No, just where it says and businesses, you increase the standard of living for the citizens, but I don't think you increase the standard of living for a business.
No, but you could.
You could increase the success of the business
Well, you can do that.
or increase the profitability of a business.
There you go.
Or
And,
the
uh,
environment in which it works.
Yeah.
In which they work.
And I would, I like this because what it's saying to me is that increase the standard of living for the citizens. Is if you have a certain product, if you sell a certain commodity, are you looking at the people that purchase from your establishment? And so you need to look at the standard of living when you do anything. Any business should, even a consulting business. I think that it's important to increase the standard. That is part and parcel, I think, of some of the problems why businesses sometimes are not as successful as they could be. They're not, nothing's predicated on the living standards of the people they're serving.
So would you include in the and businesses, Eugene, were you saying, and provide an environment that supports? What was it that you were suggesting there? Instead
I like
of using increase,
Yeah, I like supports.
support,
Mhm.
support.
How about this?
Hmm.
And improves the business climate for and just improves the business climate within the
That's
city.
good. You can
I like
say
that.
Yeah.
increase standard of
I
living
like
for
that.
the citizens and improve the business climate for
Yep.
the
Yes.
improve business climate.
Yeah.
Then the other thing, I'm sorry, but I always get back to encourage and support. So then up two paragraphs, the city invests in high quality, blah, 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 to proactively support. Is that like encourage?
No,
Okay,
you're supporting what's already there. What's already been established is being supported.
so you're proactively supporting educational excellence. Okay. Okay,
Amy, did that make sense? We're
Yes.
going to add the improved business climate for businesses. Okay,
okay.
good. Anything else on this page? Next page. That's the end of the economic development.
Yeah,
We got through the economic development.
Bobby.
Well done.
Any suggestions on this page?
As a matter of procedure, all of the red is to be included.
I'm sorry, say again?
Yes.
yes.
The red underline is to be included, the red strike through is to get rid of.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was on our email that this was sent on. Okay,
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
our history and background.
So Lee, is Lance on yet?
Yes.
Yes, please promote him. Thank you. Yes, please.
this portion actually has page numbers on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. Yeah,
Yes,
you're
it
right.
does.
Shall we go?
Mhm.
We're going to wait for Lance.
Lance, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. All right. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but it's not feeling very good today. What I've done is we presented to the Planning Commission the Cultural and Historical Resources chapter, red lines, I think 2 meetings ago. And now we've gone through and we've updated based on the comments provided. One of the comments was the homesteading descriptions near the beginning of the chapter were a little cumbersome with all the northwest quarter, southwest quarter things. So we've kept the same when it referenced the location that didn't use this kind of format, we kept that. and we kept the settlers' names and timeframes, but we've removed all this kind of jargon. Additionally, there's a comment we
Lance,
had. Oh yeah, go ahead.
tell us where you're talking about. We can't follow you unless you tell us where you're at.
Oh, so the homesteading descriptions. Sorry, give me 1 sec to make sure I can grab the page number.
I
for
actually
you.
got page numbers on here, so it just points to the page and paragraph.
It's on the overhead here, Tom, pages 3 through 5.
Yeah. And so those descriptions included a lot of kind of technical jargon with these quarter section descriptions of the locations. And we've removed that. We cleaned that up a little bit to make it so it's a little bit easier for the average person to go through and read it. We've also, there was reference to a few business names in this chapter as far as where certain historical locations were. And the comment was we needed to remove those with more specific place names in case those businesses were no longer there, 10, 20 years out. And so Heroes and Legends, we changed that to the intersection of Mission Avenue and Harvard Road. And in reference to Safeway, I've changed that to the grocery store building located northeast of the intersection of Liberty Lake Road and Country Vista Road. It's a large description, but it's one of those descriptions that can stay there for time. And those again are on pages 8 and 15. And then lastly, the last real major change we did was I included a little a little paragraph about incorporation, because when this chapter was initially written, I believe it was the first comp plan. And so the city was rather new. And so it wasn't very historical maybe at the time, the incorporation, but I thought it was important to include that. So we've gone through on page 14 and added just a short paragraph of when the city incorporated and the reasons why.
We don't have a page 14 or 15.
I do not either.
Let me see. Let's see. I'll find it real quick for you guys.
Well, while you're finding it, I've got a comment on the first page.
It's on page 9.
Thank you, Lisa. In the middle of the page where it goes into a story and starts off with, in February 1871, I moved. I love history, but I don't think that in this document we need to have stories. And I would suggest eliminating that entire portion. The comments that Ross has made and researched are history. And
Okay.
the story is an oral tradition, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily something we want in there.
I agree.
Okay. We could go ahead and make that change.
You see where I'm talking, Lance?
Were there any other comments?
I have a couple of comments.
Yeah.
Should I go? Okay. Page 5. It refers to the early 1900s to the blah, 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 blah.
All right. So what we can do then is go ahead and make that change, and then I guess bring it back again for final approval.
Where are you talking?
Well, so
Excuse me,
let's-
Commissioners. Oh,
if I may talk about process for a second here. So we hope to get the red lines, we'll reflect them we'll include this in the packet. I think that probably after we get through this review, we'll have a draft that can go into the draft document. I don't think we need to bring it back again until we're ready to finalize it. But we'll share the changes with you.
And we'll remove all this and we'll see it as a document
Yes.
and then go through it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Jim.
Can I go? Page 5. Talks about kind of in the middle of the page, early 1900s, early spring Valley Farmers Ranch take advantage of the break Saturday night at Spokane Bridge and dancing to hillbilly music. I'd like to use a term other than hillbilly. We call it maybe, I don't know, fiddle music or something.
What was it referred by during that period of time? We probably want to stay consistent to the history
Either that or just not name it.
or just
say-
not name it
Just say.
Yeah.
instead of renaming it. Well, does anybody know what it was referred to at that time? Was it not hillbilly music?
1900s.
Mm-hmm.
I know-
Charlie or Gene, you're the You were around during that time.
I think it's just fine, you know? It is a little bit offsetting, off-putting though.
I agree.
It's,
And
Sure.
it's not.
Yeah, I take offense at that.
Okay,
Can we just say dancing and music and just call it good?
just say,
Music of the times or
Yeah.
something like.
yeah, there we go.
That's
okay,
You got that, Lance, to music of the times?
Yeah, we can make that change.
Is that okay?
Yep.
then,
I apologize on the page numbers. I think from the time I created the presentation to when this went out, the page numbers changed. So
oh.
apologize for that.
Well, okay, so I'll just continue. I got a couple. So on page 7, our page 7,
Hmm.
about many visitors to Liberty Lake quit running by June 27th. Liberty Lake Park was sold and in 1934 and was renamed. No, I guess,
No, you're right. Sold, period, in 1934 was renamed.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
And
No
then
problem.
what was on page 10? Referred to Friends of Pavilion Park Holiday Ball. They quit that about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. Let's see.
Reserving.
Holiday ball is no longer being done.
No, it is
Yeah,
not.
It's not being done anymore.
Okay. Yeah, we can take that out.
Okay.
Okay.
And,
And there's no Friends of Pavilion Park anymore either, so,
well, not that we're not friendly, but.
no, it's just that it
The
absorbed,
organization doesn't exist.
it moved into Parks and Arts.
Okay.
Well, there's also not an Easter egg hunt or Christmas light contest anymore either.
Isn't there an Easter
And
egg?
the art sale is one day.
Yeah,
Well, and this is,
So-
it's gonna change over
Right.
time. I think the point is so maybe we shouldn't be naming the events at
Yep,
all.
There you go. Yeah.
But just talking about the plethora of
Just-
community events.
yeah, everything after, starting with including,
Okay.
that become a part of the Liberty Lake culture, period. That's true. They're gonna change by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, I got, that was it on that section for me.
Good points. Anybody else? Greg?
I have a comment. On page 12, there's a great summary of how, and this is added as to how you're going to identify these properties and the process. I think this, my suggestion is, instead of leaving it there, put it on page 2 under goals and policy, because it talks about identifying these properties, and this is the process. Because there is no state process.
So the reason why we put it here and put it in this format is because it would require council to actually choose to fund a position to do this. We don't have the staffing to do this kind of a program. The question is, do we have enough remaining historical properties that this makes sense, or do they have an approach? We wanted to suggest it was a direction that the city could go if they wanted to, but I don't think it requires an investment. And so that's
Time and money.
yes, exactly. So that's the question. We wanted to lay it out there and suggest that it is a direction the city could go, and perhaps council, or if there are proponents who would like to bring that forward and make that happen, they could speak to city council and it outlines a process could be done. That's why the language is very soft in this. It's not that we will do this, it's if we were going to do this, this is how we should do it. Does that make sense?
I think it should be at the. Lance, whatever's going on there, are you okay?
Yeah. Oh, can you hear growling? It's my dogs are playing. Sorry.
No, it's a
On
dire
mute.
wolf, we could tell.
Yeah.
The zoo.
Have,
Can we just hang on? Lance, did you get that? We want to put the importance and purpose of protecting, I want to put that at the beginning. And then, I hear what you said. And then,
Mhm. Yeah, we can make that change.
Mhm.
I
I
like
just
that.
have a comment on history. Because this is what this is about, right? Yes. I, being a buff of history of all types, I would prefer personally, when we're going to change what a word is, because it has significant meaning for a period in time, historical period in time, that we list it as it is, as it was during that period of time, and then add a caveat that says, no longer that word or phrase or term is no longer used, instead of Xing it out and saying, let's use something else. History is not being taught anymore, as we should know. All of us are of the age that know history, that we've been taught. Our children will be slowly dumbified when we take out what unfortunately is what it was.
but that's not what this is, DG.
No, I'm talking about hillbilly.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the term hillbilly,
It's just,
because
look at what we're putting into our comp plan.
I know,
This is more than I think you're going to see in the city of Spokane's comp plan.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm airing my particular opinion where we're going to write anything that has to do with history. Let's try to be as close to what it is so that the young people coming after us that know nothing about the before don't get a saturated or changed view.
Sterile.
Sterilize, I get you.
And I know, I mean, trust me, as the person who deals with other types of history associated with my ethnicity, we do want to be true to form because we're not teaching them anything. They're just reading, we didn't say much about the native. We mentioned Native Americans and wanted to, that's all I'm saying. So while we go through this, I just want to let the commissioners know there will be occasion when I state the obvious to me that we should keep inside, not to force you to do anything. I mean, I'm outnumbered anyway.
So with regard to page 5, where you're talking about hillbilly music, you could say what was, but then we don't know for sure that that's what it was.
Well,
I'm sure that's what Ross used for a term.
No, it was in that period of time called
Well, we
hillbilly.
could research,
Or
and see
folk-
that
or
was
folk
what it was.
Music, I would say maybe.
Yeah.
Folk music, it is.
I've never
know,
heard, and I'm a history major too, my dear.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is it's also known as folk history. So let's put something true to form
Well-
during that period of time.
And
We may not agree, and that is not why we're here to be. We are here to allow our opinions so that they surface, so we all hear what we're talking about and what each of us mean, because we're all contributing. So,
absolutely, and just to recognize what you're saying, I think it's worthwhile for us to do just a little bit of research to see if there was.
We just talked to Russ.
is
If it
it-
was hillbilly music, then we can put it in there and we can say the term that was used at the time. Is that?
Then
what-
referred to as hillbilly.
yeah, that's
For-
exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
that, I like that.
Thank you for the
Okay.
translation.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. So,
I think, DJ, I think you should have a round of applause for that, because that deals with the current items that we're facing every day relative to what's true and what's not true. I take an offense at hillbilly music because we don't talk that way now, but people did talk that way.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that we recognize that, often called hillbilly music or something softer, instead of just bang, throw out the word.
So you got that, Lance?
Lance, I'll be happy to talk to Ross.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've got that, and I can reach out to him too if, when I get back.
Did anybody else have any comments on this chapter?
I think it's an excellent addition to the comp plan.
I'll just say one thing. I compared the changes to my notes from our last time we talked about it, and I just want to say, Lance, great job.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So with that, we can move on to housing and community service goals and policies. And I broke this out specifically because when we talked a great deal about the goals and policies at the last meeting, and I want to go through them and make sure that we got those right before we get into the rest of the chapter. And so we're a little farther along with goals and policies. So, and if you'll forgive me, I got to get to that page in my document also. So just a reminder, as Sharifa pointed out at the last, at our last meeting, goals state desired outcomes or intended achievements. Example, provide a range of housing options to address needs of all economic segments of the community. Policies establish guiding actions and commitments to these actions. They provide the framework for future decision-making and authorization for regulations to implement the policies. An intent example would be encourage townhouses and multifamily development that have a similar design and scale as the surrounding neighborhood. An action example is to allow townhouses and multifamily development that is designed and scaled consistently with the surrounding neighborhood. So the housing goals and policies, again, when we've moved things around or changed the wording on them, they are shown in the red line format. If they are something that we're required to include or changes that we're required to make that we want to make sure is reflected in our goals and policies, they're highlighted in yellow. So going back to goal 1, preserve the aesthetics of existing neighborhoods and support high quality development. And there are several goals associated with that. I'm showing the first 4 on this slide for you to consider. Did anybody have any comments or changes to these based upon your review and what we talked about last time?
Okay, those are policies, not goals.
Yes,
They were
I
talking about-
understand.
Okay.
The
goal was on top,
but
yes.
the 4 policies. And by the way, though, that which is not redlined is something that was the wording that was used in the original. So the only thing that changed in this goal is actually aesthetics versus character.
I'll just say it again for the whole document, compared it to my notes from last time we discussed it, and great job.
Thank you.
Nothing from me.
Has anybody got anything on this page? Which
This
is
is page
hers,
1.
Page 1.
Okay, all right, we'll go by page.
Let's do it by page because that's
Okay.
what we have.
It's easier. Okay.
Jim,
No, page 1, no.
All right.
anybody else? Page 2 then. Starts off with support more affordable.
There,
Yes.
on number 7, it says, consider opportunities for mixed-use development in the light industrial zone. It was recommended by me.
Yep.
My recollection is,
Perfect timing.
that we talked about increasing the density in the R2 district to 16 per acre.
That's in here.
And
That's in here.
also putting that same density in allowable use in the light industrial district. That's not quite what this says.
It's not quite what it says because we didn't necessarily have consensus on that direction. And so, and I think that that is a pretty big change for us to make from a land use perspective. And so I proposed some lighter language that you or the planning commission can choose to do to expand that. The challenge with allowing residential in light industrial is that there may be impacts to the businesses. This is an area where tends to be more noise, there tends to be more traffic at certain times of day, et cetera. And so that's a question. I'm not making a judgment one way or another, but I think that what I heard from other commissioners was that there wasn't consensus on that at this point, but it's certainly something that we could look at in the future. Now, others may have a different, may have heard something different in that meeting. That was my attempt to address your,
Is that for both issues? One, the first one being increasing the density. That was recommended by, I think, our consultant and the state.
yeah, and so we do that elsewhere. There is no residential density in the industrial zone.
But in the R2 district, they
Yes, that's,
suggested increasing.
that's in here. It is
It's
in here.
Okay. So the only issue then is, do you want to include that type of use in the light industrial district?
That's a question. That's
That's
a
the
question for this body.
Okay.
And so you could
Right,
make a
and right-
motion to change that and
And right now, the light industrial district does not allow any.
other than
Caretaker?
caretaker. So like if you had where you often see that is with like mini storage or something like that. Where you'll have a
Sure.
caretaker,
It can be one dwelling
right?
for the caretaker.
Yes.
Doing medium, and I would call that medium density residential, 16 per acre stack flats, which you see all over Liberty Lake and also Post Falls. It works really well in the light industrial district because it puts people close to their job. And they can either be rental or they can be fee simple units. I've seen it done both ways, but it usually it's in high demand because it's close to work. People like it. They don't like so much I've seen the mixed use residential on top, commercial on the first floor, not so much. They don't sell that great. But this idea in a light industrial district works pretty well.
Well, and we do have that in our mixed use zones, and we did see where a few years ago, Meadowood Technology Campus, they actually did a zone change to change it from light industrial to mixed use, because that was their vision for how they were going to transition that development away from some uses that weren't getting as much traction anymore.
Can you achieve that kind of density in the mixed use district?
Yes.
Can.
Yeah, in fact, the density in the mixed use zones, there's no maximum density. So yes, you can.
Well, we'll just defer to the commission.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I would think it would take extensive review to modify the amount of businesses that you can put in a given area as opposed to residential area. And so I would encourage us to leave things alone.
Other thoughts? Is this a keep or is this a takeaway? Or is it a modify?
As written,
Is it keep it as written, modify it, or remove it? What say you?
Does anybody else want to change it? Then let's keep it.
Okay.
if the density issue is addressed, keep this.
I think
There
it's
you go.
addressed in a couple other places too, but
Any other comments on?
Page 2.
Page 2.
page 3, goal 2.
Yeah, I did have a thought, call it comment, but as a policy here, we want to, I'll just number 8. Support caregiver relief programs, including parenting, childcare, and elder care support, which I think those are all good things. But number 8 is the only place where we reference, support for parenting and childcare. And I'm just wondering if that's something that there's more that the city could do to provide that level of support for, in the context of the article that you put out today with all the people working from home. in Liberty Lake. Because I have kids that have working from home. Where they need support, frankly, is with childcare support while they're working from home. And so I'm wondering if maybe that concept of childcare support could be included in other parts of these policies, like even in number, I don't know. I was thinking first off, it would, we talk about enable nonprofits and human service providers to use public facilities for community events, meetings, and I was thinking, and childcare support.
That's a great suggestion.
And maybe there's other places in here where we could look at childcare support.
So would you put that? Enable nonprofits and human service providers to use public
Number
facilities
4,
for community meetings, childcare support
yeah,
and events.
yeah. And I don't know if there's any other,
I think it's a good point.
No, I think that's a great one.
Again, I think that one of the things right now, and really post-COVID, it was in the 40+ years that I've been working, in every municipality I ever worked in, I was always involved in some way with a child care counselor, something like that. It was always one of the most challenging economic development issues. And it's, since COVID, it's 10 times worse.
Especially now that people are being told to go back to work instead of
It's-
working from home.
and the kids go to preschool and daycare, but there's so many times when that daycare is canceled for whatever reason, for teacher conferences or for whatever. It's just, then what do those parents do? It's a challenge because it's rare where you just have a situation where one parent stays at home to look after the kids. It's kind of a rarity these days.
It's almost economically infeasible to do that anymore.
So in terms of, there's a whole section about people being, I think I call it housing challenged or rent challenged because of the cost as a percent of income. Well, I think to the extent that the city can facilitate providing childcare services, it would take some of the pressure off of those folks. So if
I'm not sure that we're the most
I
appropriate
understand
entity,
that,
but
The city can't do it, but how about, would this be the place that you might change to promote instead of just support?
maybe,
Because
because I have a hard time with those
right.
promote, support.
I know, but it's.
Promote
you
is
said
much more active.
Yes, then I would say promote.
Amy, is that the right place to put a word like that?
Thank you, Lee. Proactively, yes.
I like adding it to that enabling, because up at the very beginning, we talk about facilitating programs, and that's an active thing too,
Okay.
facilitate and support.
And I don't, so I was thinking of number 4, but I don't know if there's any other of these 9 policies where that would come into play, but let's just put it there for now.
Okay.
And then I'll think more about it.
Anything else on page 3?
I have a question.
Right.
At the end of number 6, last 4 words, in older housing stock. Is that referenced anywhere else? Is there a definition for what that means? Just curious.
Well, so all of our housing stock ages over time.
Right.
The problem is new housing stock as opposed to older housing stock. New housing stock has to meet the energy code. It's the older housing stock. And one of the reasons why I use that language is because that's the language that you see in community development block grants, in SNAP programs, in other programs that provide for that weatherization and repair services. It has more to do with the condition of the home than it does necessarily the age of the home. But typically it correlates to older housing stock. I'm trying to differentiate from new housing stock.
Because eventually, most housing stock here will be older housing stock.
Exactly. And so there will be a point where we, as the population ages also, that there may be difficulty in keeping up with the maintenance and et cetera, et cetera. So just this is really, the language that I used here really has more to do with the things I did in housing when I was back in New York.
Thank you.
Anything else? Page 4?
So wait, so that was just the policies.
Yep.
So now we're going to go on to the next section. So if we don't have any more changes for goals and policies, I think we're golden there. And then, but now I wanted to talk about the new language that you haven't really looked at yet. Last time we didn't really talk about, there's two things that happened. Number one, we merged the housing element with the community service element because it makes sense given all of the changes to state law as it relates to the planning for housing. There really is a community service or human service component to housing. And so that's number one. Number two, both were pretty light chapters in the old comp plan. And so, and we have a lot of new requirements. So I wanted to kind of take you through the contents of this chapter. And this is based upon the requirements that we have, and we'll go through these one by one, but I want to give you kind of an overview first. The introduction was really just the merger and the melding and maybe updating some of the language in the introduction, but kind of merging the two sections together. The goals and policies we've talked through, so don't need to spend any more time on that. But I did want to point out that again, we have included some that we are required to include, and that's the important piece on that. Housing and community services integration. Again, this was some of the language that was included in the old comp plan that was just updated and merged. The residential land capacity analysis. So we have summarized that here, and I know that it's still wonky. I have the minimum that I have to have in there. The land capacity analysis is something that Commerce will also be appended as to the document and will be a point of reference. But there are specific boxes I have to check in the housing element that come from that land capacity analysis. The good news is that's not all new because you've already reviewed the land capacity analysis. The next section, housing affordability and the racially disparate impacts assessment. Again, this is a summary of the key points from the technical memo that we received. But again, something that is required by Commerce to be included in this element. Strategies for increasing housing availability and affordability. Again, that is really a summary of the memo, and housing is a summary of, and I printed it out for you here. Charlie, I know you took a lot of time going through the handout we had last time.
Yeah. Sure.
We actually, this actually, everybody has it. This actually goes through, this is the cleanup of that and actually makes the changes that we talked about in it. Again, referencing what is required that we must do. And then also the recommended strategies. And the reason why I broke it out this way is because as we take the housing element out and shop it with city council, we shop it with the public. I want to be super, super clear on what we have no choice about doing versus what there are some options in doing. And so that is kind of the reason why we formatted it this way. And the reason why I dropped this, as I think this really covers a lot of ground. in terms of, addressing how we're going to overcome barriers to affordability and availability. And then the housing implementation strategies is just, we talked about this, we are going to have an implementation plan. In this particular case, our implementation strategy, the major implementation strategy talks about the fact that we're going to have to overhaul all these, our development code to reflect these changes. And that is a big lift, and that's going to be a 2026 thing. That we work on while we've got our document in review with Commerce, et cetera. Anyhow, so that was the background. Having said that, I'd like to go through this as we did with the other documents and just, we'll skip right over the policy, but page by page, see what kind of comments you had.
Start us off on a page.
Or let's do it by section, just because it's easier that way. So section 1, did anybody have any comments on the introduction?
I don't know
Yeah, where are we?
if I'm following this correctly. I'm looking at something called page 4.
It's actually on page 1 is the introduction.
Oh,
Housing and community services.
There we are.
But just, we start out with an intro, it's just an
Oh,
introduction.
community
when we get to
services
housing.
goals. Yeah, okay.
And we already kind of went through page 1.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so but I wanted to see if anybody had any concerns with the introduction on page 1.
I'm still lost.
So we're on housing, it's on page 1. Housing
We
and
went through
community
that.
services.
Yeah.
Got it. It's the one that we already went through.
And that was one that you saw before, by the way, because that part we had already done the merger. So then the next section is, after the goals and policies are housing and community services integration. And so we talk about,
Yes.
Bottom of page 3.
so that's on page 3. We, at the bottom, affordable and special needs housing is the first subsection of that.
Mhm.
And so any comments in, well, let's just start with the affordable and special needs housing section, subsection. Hearing none.
Mm-mm.
Infrastructure and services. Again, this is just kind of a merger of what stuff that was in our comp plan previously and just kind of cleaned up and streamlined, but they were good points. Then we jump into the required residential land capacity analysis. So again, this is a summary. It's not, it's longer than I want it to be, but it has to, I'm checking boxes as I go. Any comments on the population,
Yeah.
population growth?
Yeah, I know I'm repeating myself. I think it's important here where they talk about the population projection for Spokane County. Well, can we please put in, even if it's just a swag, Kootenai County, what it is now and what's projected to be? Because I think it's misleading just to say Spokane County.
Right, what we're required to do is, but we can certainly have that as a contextual thing because they are.
Because I think because you'd be looking at, 600,000 versus 800,000, close to 1 million.
Well, and they're widening I-90 and we're not.
But the point is, it's a
They're a
whole
paper.
different,
Sorry, that's
I know.
transportation, sorry.
Yep.
okay, so that's my comment.
Okay.
Even if it's just in brackets or a footnote or something.
I haven't talked to the community development director over there for a long time, so it's a good excuse to give him a call.
There you go.
Anything else on population, projected population growth? And by the way, I'm gonna put this, I will put that in there, but I will put it as an aside kind of comment.
Bracket, all right.
Okay. Existing housing and projected housing needs. Now, one of the things that I did, so there's been quite a bit of conversation at the PTAC and the steering committee of elected officials level We call it SKIO, but everybody laughs when we say it, so I'm. Related to this concept, why population and housing the population and housing projections don't align. And there is looking at the Housing for All Planning Tool, or HAPT. There's assumptions in there that Commerce made when they developed the tool, which, by the way, if we don't use that tool, we're gonna have to justify anything else we do, and whereas this is just, that's their tool. But the assumption that was made was that, and this is across the state, that 60% of the housing is related to your projected population growth. 30% is assumed to be addressing the lack of availability of affordable housing for the cost burden community. 10% of it is actually related to providing housing for the currently unhoused. So it's making up for, the projections are intended to make up for the shortage of housing that we have in the state of Washington. And so that's why there's a disconnect between what our population growth is and what the housing growth is. So which is why I brought it full circle at the end and take the housing projection and say, what does that mean? It could support as much as this population. And I thought that was important, and that was not included in the land capacity analysis, but I wanted to call that out to all of you, because I think it's, as we push this information out, yes, it's super, super wonky, but we also have a very educated community here. And I think people are going to want to understand better where these numbers came from. So I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that.
I have a question relative to the overall concept of housing in this region. Is there a regional housing authority that transcends both states?
No.
Well, the FHA transcends, but it doesn't exist as we knew it either.
So there's nobody or no organization that really kind of monitors the development that's occurring between
So
Spokane
by
and
state.
Coeur d'Alene?
yeah, so community development program was under Health and Human Services. And that is probably the closest to trying to deal with the housing situation, but it is, again, I think that, I think on a federal level, we're not very, there. It's a local issue. The state's trying to deal with it at a state level. And
Okay, the next piece, then, is there something that we do between, say, the city of Liberty Lake and the city of Post Falls?
so the answer is no. And one of the things I want to say is that every single planning effort that has tried to marry the two has been, there is a great deal of antipathy with the Washington side of the state. Everything from transit, we could make some real inroads in transit by connecting this. We're one metropolitan planning area. We actually, under the commutation patterns that exist today, we should, by all rights, have a interstate MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. We do not because of the politics. And the politics, the strong sentiment is on the Idaho side of the border. They want their own deal. They don't want to be tied in with Spokane.
Collaborate with.
The same thing with transit. When they were building the transit center for CityLink Transit, the county commissioners actually made a point that that they would only approve it if never could there be a linkage between SDA and CityLink. It defies logic, honestly. The extent to which there's,
Tension.
yeah. So, no. Unfortunately, no. It is unfortunate because we should be planning it as a region. We should be planning our transportation as a region. We should be planning our housing and our land use as a region. We should be, again, we should be planning environmental issues as a region. They actually don't believe in environmental reviews over in Idaho.
Oh, but there is a regional, aquifer,
There,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
aquifer board.
An aquifer protection board, so there is
There's a-
one that they do interact, but that is more as it relates to trying to understand capacity. And we have much more participation on this side than they do on that side.
Okay.
Anyhow, I'm sorry.
Moving along.
Shall we keep going? Anything else on the residential land capacity analysis? Did anybody see anything that they had any issues with? Any changes?
Well, I think when we get to the housing affordability and racially disparate impacts, I see where that our charts give us the breakdown by different ethnic groups of income. And yet overall, we're continuing to lag behind even the city of the valley with regard to our diversity.
Absolutely.
And or racial disparity.
And again, not seeing any policies necessarily that are creating barriers themselves. The best, the closest we can come is the affordability issue here. And I think affordability is the thing that becomes the barrier to having more diversity of population. And so if we address barriers to affordability and availability, then we can maybe address that. But yeah, so that was that. I mean, that was the big takeaway. And again, this is a summary of the.
Well, we
the
spelled
memo.
it out, so I think that that's honest, but it's still.
And one of the things I will say with regard to that is that once you guys are good with this, I intend to send this element to Commerce to take a look, see, and to tell me if we're missing anything, because I'm talking thousands of pages of guidance on housing alone. If anybody's been in my office lately, you'll see my desk littered with guidance.
What's the next?
Housing affordability and racially disparate impacts. Does anybody have any?
Which page are you?
I'm trying to find it right now. I'm jumping ahead through.
That was on
Page
page
10.
10.
Page 10.
And again, this is a summary from the technical memo. I
Yep.
did try and tell a little bit more of a story than
Yeah.
was in the
Mhm.
memo, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Comments. You had a comment on figure 17, didn't you? That's on page 16.
Oh, just, I didn't know how it's the one that has to do with median income. And it has the block and it shows
Right.
where the different incomes are. My question was, I thought maybe I don't know how they chose to break it out that way, and Lisa explained it.
It's based on census tract.
That's the way that census
Census
works.
block.
However, that's not, it's not accurate. And it doesn't what it shows is the area that I live in, and the area that's just to the east of me is where the mobile homes and the manufactured homes and everything are. And then that skews all the information that's to the north
This is,
of Mission. And so to me, it would seem that would be an area, and then it's an area that focus for us. Because that's the area that has the most potential for affordable housing. Okay, when you go into the north of that, we're all greenstone, so.
Well, and here's the funny thing, so the census tracts and even the block groups do not follow city boundaries, and nor do our transportation TASs. It's one of the frustrating things of being a newer city. And so one of the things, those block groups actually extend north in the river, and that area is actually a relatively low income because it's a farming community. And so there is that. I can ask, I don't know if it's possible for them to get a finer distribution. So like even the maps from the state don't really show us enough detail or enough show us based upon neighborhoods. We can make assumptions about what's going on. We know what's happening in the area that is south of the freeway, along Country Vista and Appleway. We know what's happening there. And it has to do with the multifamily apartments. And so, I mean.
Well, that's my point. Most of these areas have apartments in them. That particular area does not. And yet the income is considerably lower than the others. So
Right.
I would just like to see there be an opportunity for, if we were going to talk about affordable housing, that we put that into an area.
We could, so.
East Central is an identified area in Spokane as one.
Sure, and
Yeah.
so, my thought is that we could include a paragraph or two discussing it. I may not be able to get the income data on that, but recognizing that it is a mobile home community. It's not a mobile home park, but it's a mobile home subdivision. We could certainly, one of the things that you can do with, and this is a program that I did in New York where we, two different programs. One was just doing rehab and helping with weatherization. Another one was actually replacing older manufactured homes with stick built. And we did it through community development block grant and a home grant. And which again, I don't know.
Nobody that lives in that area wants to have any of that happen. They like it the way that it is.
Okay.
And I know this because when Phil and I were on the council, when we had the road plan for improvements, and in order to improve the streets there that have absolutely no potholes, no cracks, no anything, it's a very lightly used area. We would have to put in significant water, sewer construction to do anything that was there. And they didn't want to have anything to do with it. I went house by house through that place, and
Wow.
I probably found one or two people that were interested in it. So we just didn't spend money there, which.
So does it merit then, a discussion of that particular neighborhood?
I don't think that we want to spell it out in our comp plan, but I think that it's a reality for the city council, certainly.
Other thoughts?
I just have a quick one. You're missing a block group, south of the dark green one. I know most of that's golf course, but if you go all the way down along the lake and all of that, it is still part of the area, so maybe worthwhile having that in there as well. More of a nitpicky thing than anything. Because some of that is within the city, I believe, on the right-hand side underneath the dark green part,
Which,
This area right in here.
still on figure 17.
okay.
There's that like full triangle piece that has
Yep.
nothing in it.
That's actually the triangle piece?
Well, this part here is the lake,
Anything underneath the darkest green portion.
this right here.
But there is some on the right-hand side, I believe, that is actual housing. The golf course doesn't go
Oh,
all the
okay.
way. Just an observation.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Jim.
A little confused.
What page?
Oh, 11, 12, and 13. No, 12, 13, and 14.
Okay.
But the cost burdened households in Liberty Lake. Okay, let's figure 12 and figure 13. They talk about the non-white population of Liberty Lake and Spokane County.
Yeah, they're just comparing the Liberty Lake to Spokane County.
What about cost burden households in Liberty Lake compared to Spokane County?
I don't think that we have that data. I can look and see, we may have that data, but I don't think that we do.
And you're not really, yeah, and maybe it's unimportant, but I would be curious as to without regard to non-white population or white population, what has been the change in cost burden households in Liberty Lake from the periods that we show here, 2018 to 2023? In other words, we show the non-white population, but then we make the statement that the Liberty Lake cost barriers impact both white residents and residents of color. So I'm trying to understand the cost burden households in aggregate between 2018 and 2023. What have they done, and how's that compare with Spokane County?
Right.
You understand what I'm? In other words, are we way outside what's been happening?
Do we have any data for Spokane County? I think that's the question.
I'm gonna have to, this is work the consultant did, so I'm gonna have to ask them to take a look at
Yeah.
that.
But even just for cost burdened households for Liberty Lake between 2018 and 2023, how's that changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure that it's increased, but yeah. I will talk to the consultant about that. See if we can get some additional information. I also did not include all of the charts and graphs in there because I was, again, trying to tell the story. So it may actually be, I'll have to go back and look at the.
My point is that what we're seeing here for Liberty Lake for non-white population, is that really way outside what's happening with the rest of the county?
We don't have that information.
We've got the population, but with respect to cost burden
Yeah.
households.
It does seem like we're trying to compare the two here, and then we're not.
Yeah, so let me go back and take a look at it and I will.
Well, here, I mean, we're comparing non-white population, but I think the more, which is not saying that's not important, but I'd like to know cost burdened population, the comparison.
Okay, that's a good point. Let me, I will check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see, because again, we have to show the ethnicity piece to see if there is any racially disparate situation, but I think that is a very good point on the, again, we're making the conclusion that affordability is the biggest barrier. So let's
see.
Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, all right, got it.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Yeah.
This is more of a data thing because I'm a data person. If you look at figure 11 from 2018 to 2023, looks like Liberty Lake lost 65% of its Asian population. I'm just curious of where that data came from. I know you said the consultant did most of it.
It's such a small percentage that
It is, but
Could have been family
we're
leave.
just making sure that all the data is compiled correctly. That number just stands out compared to everything else. So I'm just curious as to how that happened, or if people just changed their answers on their census things or whatever happened. That just seems questionable.
Yeah. That could be, that very well could be. The census data may not be. It is
Small potatoes, just curious.
Does Asian population include our Indian from India families? How are they
I believe it does.
It does.
Okay,
Mhm.
does it? It's a Pacific Island, the
It's
5-letter acronym.
Pacific Island, so Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islands.
I saw that.
Their own
Yep.
category.
But it depends too on how people answer,
Right.
right? So they could answer other race or two or more races.
Oh, sure.
It's just comical because race, these are ethnicities. And I just wish they were noted as ethnicities because these are ethnicities.
Right. That's what,
These
well,
are
it's-
not
that's why it's race slash.
I know. So when we're missing people, we need to know, as you just said, what are they identifying with?
And how are we counting it?
And that's
Well,
right.
And how they identify can change over time also.
Yes, it's
I-
a preference. Yeah.
I thought what Troy said is that if somebody has the opportunity, maybe they don't want to fill out the survey, the census, and they just put others so that they don't have to deal with,
Yeah.
and that's not encouraging them to.
Yeah. I did agree with Troy.
Anything else on the housing affordability and racially disparate impacts?
Nope.
All right.
For me,
Strategies for increasing housing availability, and I'm going to encourage you because as we have found before, my printer doesn't do what I want it to do.
We're on page 18. Yes.
Yes,
is that same as this?
that is the same, that's why I
Thank you,
printed those
'cause I
out.
couldn't read that stuff.
I figured. So, first of all, let's just talk about the strategies for increasing housing availability and affordability, that paragraph. Did anybody have any comments or suggestions on that? Okay, then let's dig into the strategies. And I'm gonna again caution you that, the required strategies, this isn't even Department of Commerce requiring them. This is required by the state legislature.
Mhm.
The RCWs have changed, so we can rail about them. We can complain about them, but by the way, if we don't do them, they are, the majority of these, I think there's, if not all of them, are ones that will go into effect whether we change our ordinance or not. And we'll have to follow the state's model ordinance if we do that. And so, again, I want to make certain that, as you look at the required ones, if there's anything, if you see typos, if you see anything that you're. Okay,
I figured they're required. I didn't look at them, so
okay,
they don't require
I
typos,
think
do
that
they?
it represents what you've told us before.
Yeah.
I
Alright.
think that's the point that Phil was making
That's-
too. And that you did in green, the things that are optional.
and so, and you had provided me with some comments. Charlie, I want you to note the proposed code update actually included some of the things that you were commenting on the spreadsheets that you sent me. So I guess this is the one that we want to talk about, though, the recommended, if anybody has any comments, concerns, or questions, and I understand maybe we should go through these one at a time since you probably couldn't read them to begin with.
We have read them though.
It took some effort, yeah.
We need to go with these one at a time because we've gone over this.
Okay, if nobody sees any, I wanna make certain that you all are, have had some input in this. This recommended strategies, we are posting on the website under housing, the required and recommended, because I want to get this out to the public. When I workshop housing with city council, this will be in the packet and I will be talking them through this also. So I want to make sure that this is reflective of what you, planning commission, want to see.
That's what we
Yes,
talked
sir.
about.
My one and only question.
Yes, sir.
maybe I I don't recall the conversation of this group related to revised parking requirements for multi-unit housing. Multi-unit housing based on unit size or number of bedrooms. I recalled the conversation as we did not want to change. the
That's right.
requirement.
That was my recollection.
Yeah, that's my recollection also. Is it still there? I
Yep,
Missed it
it's
then.
on the back of the page. It's the second one down.
Yeah, so we're gonna take that out.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a good catch. Obviously, we're slogging right now to get through all this stuff.
Okay.
And my comment would be continuing on down the same page.
Yes.
Modify or remove the requirement for balconies.
Can you say that again? please?
Modify or remove, two down. Requirement for balconies or patios.
Oh, and we
We decided
and
not
we
to
said,
do
no,
that.
we're not gonna do that. Okay, that's correct. Good catches. I was so busy formatting that I missed those two.
Of the 10 million other ones that you caught.
Anything else? So then the last piece of this chapter, as I said, is just the paragraph on housing implementation strategies. We could probably also include something about doing 5-year, which we're required to do anyhow, but we could certainly include our 5-year implementation review. If anyone thought, we have to do it anyhow, so. That is all I have workshop wise.
Kathy, are there any, or Lee, are there anybody online for comments? I'm going to assume no one that Joe didn't make it either, so. Secretary's report, please.
Secretary's report, a couple things I wanted.
He's got his hand raised. Would you like to talk in the citizen comments? Kelly, if you'd like to talk, you have to raise your hand and then he'll allow you to make comments. Any response? Okay, let's move on.
All righty, so couple things I wanted to share with you. So the timeline for the comp plan extension to December 31st of 2026 is moving forward. It passed in the Senate and it is scheduled on the floor calendar or the House calendar. So it looks like it looks like we're making some progress there. That's an exciting news for us. I will say that the original said we had to adopt the comp plan by June 30th of 2026, and we had 6 more months to adopt the changes in code. Now, what they're saying is the code has to be done at the same time too, but it actually gives us the opportunity to bring these things forward all together. And so that, and also gives us a little wiggle room if we get some pushback from our commerce. We're still gonna do our best to try and keep on the timeline for the comp plan, other than we may push out the adoption a little bit and have more time to work on our development code stuff. So that's I wanted to share that with you. So I will be making modifications to this sheet and adding it to our comp plan page under housing. The story map is getting added the story map for history is getting added to the webpage, and we'll also be pushing that out on social media. Lance, Amy and I are beginning to start pulling together engagement things for farmers market. And we do have the Parks and Rec plan is going to the Parks and Arts Commission on Monday. and it's going to the Community Engagement Commission on Wednesday next week. So that's moving forward. We've got the network analysis. We're doing data collection right now. That's getting underway as well. And so we are making a lot of progress. Next meeting, you're going to have your sign code workshop. We will have the changes. We will put in your packet changes to the history chapter. We'll put changes to the housing and community. Well, we may not. It depends on if I can get answers from the consultant on those things. But at some point, we'll bring that back and have that in your packet and give you an opportunity to just say, did you have any comments on these things? As we kind of get these to a place where we have a draft that we can then develop our engagement around and kind of push out to the public and shop with the public and whatnot. We will probably put a pause in these chapters until we kind of get more feedback from the public and from our city council. You do have a sign code workshop coming up next week or next meeting. And we'll also give you a little bit of an update on what we're doing for engagement as well. If the Housing and Community Service chapter is not coming back to you with red lines, I might take a stab at getting the co-housing code amendment to share with you, so that we can kind of keep that moving. Again, lots of moving parts and pieces, and your schedule has changed, and I promise it will again.
Will we be working around the tables here to have people in the farmer's market during certain times? That was discussed and we haven't done anything. And if we are, there's got to be some sort of
So
background.
we have a rough schedule. We're trying to work on the engagement pieces right now. We have a rough schedule. We will be preparing and we've changed it up just a little bit. We'll be preparing, or our consultants will be preparing the engagement materials, whether they're posters or whatnot, how we engage. If people want to sign up, we have specific days when staff are going to be there. You guys can choose to sign up on days when we're not there or with us, or however you want to do it. But yes, if you're interested in participating in farmers market, we could, staff's going to do 4-hour shifts, but you guys may want to do 1 hour or 2 hour shifts.
But I think it's a good idea to have a commissioner and staff there.
I think that's awesome. And we are also inviting CEC to as well to help us with that. We will have other events as they come up. And I'm going to ask all of you to think about if there is an event that you think we should be at from an engagement standpoint this summer or into the fall. I would really encourage you all to
Barefoot.
just, of course, we're going to be at Barefoot.
Okay, but I mean, our own separate
We're going to have our own table.
along by the pavilion,
Yes,
so the people can stop and talk.
yes.
Yep.
That is a for sure thing. So yeah, but keep in mind, if you think of, or if you have some great idea for how we might reach people, if you have HOA meetings that you think that you wanted to invite us to at some point. I think it's a little early for those types of meetings yet, because we have to, like I said, we have to get a little farther in the making of the sausage.
Annual meetings are coming up. Actually, ours is. Didn't you already have yours?
End of the year.
If
November.
you wanted us there, okay, thank you.
Contentious enough, aren't they?
Yeah.
Relative to the farmer's market, is this a seasonal thing or is it a one-time event?
It's a
So
seasonal thing.
It's a
Goes
seasonal
from
thing. It's,
May till October.
Yep.
yeah,
No, I mean our participation.
I'm sorry.
Our participation.
So I will send out what our rough calendar is for farmers market, what the topics are, and you can maybe even think about what topics you're interested in participating in. Some of it you haven't heard much about yet because we haven't made much sausage yet.
But we need
Thank
to know because we've got vacations and plans. And
Absolutely. So I will send that out, and I will send that out to you. In fact, I'll make a note right now so that I do that.
Vacations, who gets a vacation?
Not me. Any commissioner reports? Bill, would you like to make a motion?
Absolutely not. Yes.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Here, here.
So moved.